We're heading to the 1800s, a period that completely revolutionized how we think about health, sickness, and the human body. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're taking a journey back in time, not just 1 or 2 decades, but a whole century. If you went to a doctor in the year 1800, your experience would be almost medieval compared to what it would be in 1900. The 19th century was a whirlwind of discovery, and it laid the groundwork for almost every aspect of modern medicine we rely on today. From understanding what actually causes diseases to performing surgery without agonizing pain, the leaps forward were simply staggering. So, grab your metaphorical top hat and let us dive into the incredible story of how medicine was transformed in the 1800s. Let's start with one of the most terrifying aspects of life back then: surgery. Before the mid-1800s, surgery was a last resort, a brutal and often fatal ordeal. Patients were held down, wide awake, as surgeons worked as fast as they possibly could. The operating theater was a place of screams and trauma. But that all began to change in the 1840s with the discovery of anesthesia. In 1846, a dentist named William T.G. Morton gave a groundbreaking public demonstration at Massachusetts General Hospital. He used ether to render a patient unconscious for a tumor removal. For the first time, the audience witnessed a silent, painless surgery. Imagine the shock and wonder in that room. This discovery was a game changer. Suddenly, surgeons had time. They could be more precise, more careful, and attempt more complex procedures that were previously unthinkable. Anesthesia turned surgery from a butchery into a science. But conquering pain was only half the battle. Even if a patient survived the surgery itself, a silent killer was waiting: infection. Post-operative infections were so common that they were often just considered a normal part of the process. Hospitals were, ironically, some of the most dangerous places you could be. Doctors would go from one patient to the next, sometimes even from an autopsy to a live patient, without washing their hands or their instruments. They simply didn't know they were carrying invisible microbes with them. This is where a French chemist named Louis Pasteur comes in. In the 1860s, Pasteur's work on fermentation led him to develop something revolutionary: the germ theory of disease. He proved that tiny, invisible microorganisms, what we now call germs, were responsible for causing disease and decay. This was a radical idea at the time. Many doctors were skeptical. The idea that something you couldn't even see could kill a grown man seemed absurd. But one surgeon took Pasteur's theory very seriously. His name was Joseph Lister. Lister was horrified by the high death rates in his surgical wards. Inspired by Pasteur, he hypothesized that these germs were causing the deadly infections in his patients' wounds. So he started experimenting. He began cleaning wounds with carbolic acid, an antiseptic substance, and even sprayed it in the air during surgery to kill airborne germs. He insisted on clean gowns and hand washing for his surgical team. The results were astonishing. The mortality rate in his ward plummeted. Lister's methods were the beginning of antiseptic surgery, the very foundation of sterile practices in hospitals today. Every time a doctor scrubs in or a nurse puts on sterile gloves, they are following in the footsteps of Joseph Lister. Together, Pasteur and Lister dragged medicine out of the Dark Ages and into a new era of understanding. While surgery was being transformed, another huge battle was being fought against infectious diseases that plagued entire populations. Diseases like smallpox, cholera, and tuberculosis were rampant, causing widespread death and panic. But the 19th century saw the birth of a new field that would give humanity a powerful weapon: epidemiology, the study of how diseases spread. One of the most famous stories comes from London in 1854 during a terrifying cholera outbreak. The prevailing theory at the time was that diseases spread through miasma, or bad air, but a physician named John Snow was not convinced. He had a different idea. that cholera was spreading through contaminated water. He meticulously mapped the cholera cases in the Soho district and noticed they were all clustered around a single public water pump on Broad Street. To prove his theory, he did something incredibly bold. He went to the local authorities and convinced them to remove the handle from the pump, making it impossible to draw water. And just like that, the cholera outbreak in that area stopped. Snow's work was a landmark moment in public health. It proved that by understanding how a disease spreads, we can take direct, effective action to stop it. This new way of thinking paved the way for modern sanitation systems, clean water, sewage treatment that have saved countless millions of lives. The fight against disease wasn't just about prevention. It was also about creating new ways to treat and cure. The 19th century was the golden age of bacteriology. Building on Pasteur's work, scientists began to identify the specific microbes responsible for specific diseases. The German physician Robert Koch was a giant in this field. In a remarkable streak of discoveries, Koch and his team identified the bacterium that causes anthrax in 1876, tuberculosis in 1882, and cholera in 1883. Identifying the enemy was the first critical step toward defeating it. Once you knew what caused a disease, you could start developing ways to fight it. This led to the development of the first vaccines since Edward Jenner's smallpox vaccine a century earlier. Louis Pasteur, for example, developed vaccines for rabies and anthrax. This work established the core principle of vaccination, introducing a weakened or inactivated form of a pathogen to train the body's immune system to fight off the real thing. The lab was becoming just as important as the hospital in the fight for human health. Beyond germs and surgery, the 19th century also changed how we see inside the human body without cutting it open. For centuries, doctors relied on touch, sound, and what little they could see from the outside. Then, in 1895, a German physicist named Wilhelm Conrad Röntgen made an accidental discovery that would change everything. While experimenting with cathode rays, he noticed a mysterious glow coming from a screen in his lab. He realized he had discovered a new kind of ray that could pass through most solid objects, but not through denser materials like bone. He called them X-rays. He took the world's first X-ray image of his wife's hand, clearly showing her bones and her wedding ring. The medical applications were immediately obvious. For the first time in history, doctors could look inside a living person's body to see broken bones, find foreign objects like bullets, and diagnose certain conditions. The X-ray machine quickly became an essential diagnostic tool, opening up a whole new window into the human body and setting the stage for all the advanced medical imaging we have today, like CT scans and MRIs. Finally, the very place where medicine was practiced, the hospital, was completely transformed. At the start of the 1800s, hospitals were often charitable institutions for the poor, feared as places where people went to die, not to get better. They were often crowded, unsanitary, and run by untrained staff. But inspired by the new understandings of hygiene and disease, reformers set out to change that. The most famous of these was Florence Nightingale. During the Crimean War in the 1850s, she was appalled by the filthy, disease-ridden conditions in the army hospitals. She implemented radical changes, scrubbing the wards, ensuring clean bedding, providing better food, and demanding basic sanitation. Her efforts dramatically reduced the death rate among soldiers. When she returned to England, she used her fame and data-driven approach to advocate for hospital reform and to establish nursing as a formal, respected profession. She championed the idea that a clean, well-organized environment was essential for healing. The modern hospital, with its emphasis on hygiene, professional staff, and patient care, is a direct legacy of the reforms that began in the 19th century. So, as we look back, the 1800s were truly a century of miracles for medicine. Think about it. They went from operating unconscious, screaming patients to using anesthesia. They went from blaming bad air for disease to understanding the role of microscopic germs. They developed the foundations of public health, created the first new vaccines in a century, learned to see inside the body with X-rays, and transformed hospitals from death traps into places of healing. Nearly every single medical practice we take for granted today has its roots in the groundbreaking discoveries of this incredible period. The work of pioneers like Pasteur, Lister, Snow, and Nightingale didn't just change medicine. They changed the course of human history, allowing us to live longer, healthier lives than ever before. It's a powerful reminder of how curiosity, scientific rigor, and a desire to help others can truly change the world. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this journey back in time as fascinating as I did, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the history of science and technology. Let me know in the comments which 19th century medical breakthrough you think was the most important. Until next time, stay curious.